Every now and then, you hear something that makes you laugh first and believe it later. Like the fact that jumping mice can save astronauts' knees, or that they're making food out of astronauts' breath. I'm Mike with List 25, and these are 25 mind-blowing facts about life, space, and everything in between. But before we begin, go ahead and like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share, do all that fun stuff, comment, because we've got plenty more where this came from, and all that stuff really helps the channel grow and continue to grow. Thank you guys so much. With that being said, let's go to space. 25. Jumping mice could save astronaut knees. Yep, space is not kind to the human body. Without gravity, bones lose density, muscles shrink, and joints start to break down. Cartilage is especially vulnerable, and once it's damaged, it barely heals. That is a big problem if we expect astronauts to work, explore, and maybe even settle other worlds. Luckily for us all, I think, scientists discovered that when mice were put through jumping exercises, the cartilage in their joints didn't just hold up, it actually got stronger. The mice that jumped developed cartilage more than twice as resilient as those that stayed still. Short bursts of impact, like hopping, appear to signal the tissue to reinforce itself. It was a small study with rodents, but the lesson is clear. Future astronauts may need a simple jumping routine before and during missions to keep their knees working far from Earth. So, oh yeah, good knees. 24. Space sickness. About half of all the talented men and women who get to become astronauts spend their first few days in orbit feeling absolutely miserable. Just think motion sickness, but in space. Space adaptation syndrome comes with waves of dizziness, headaches, nausea, and even full-on vertigo. The problem people encounter isn't zero gravity itself, it's the sudden change. Your body just doesn't know what to do when the pull of Earth disappears, so it freaks out until it adapts. Most people get over it in a few days, but those first few days are rough. Astronauts use anti-nausea patches for a reason, because if you get sick in a helmet, you're basically choking inside a fishbowl. There's nowhere for it to go. Your vision fogs up and suddenly your space adventure becomes a fight to breathe. Floating stomach contents is bad enough. Having it in your helmet is the kind of thing you don't even want to think about. 23. What's that smell? When you think about space, smell is probably the last thing that comes to mind. But astronauts say space actually does have a smell. And it's a lovely blend of seared steak, burning metal, and gunpowder all mixed together. Don Pettit, who spent time on the ISS, simply called it metallic. NASA wanted to know for themselves, so they brought in chemist Stephen Pierce, who managed to recreate the odor on Earth so rookies could get used to it during training. I mean, you wouldn't want someone distracted by the smell of space while trying to operate a $1 million spacecraft, would you? Still, you have to wonder why Pierce never marketed it. I bet a lot of man caves would line up just to say they own the smell of space. 22. We've found a double lightsaber. If Star Wars isn't your thing, first of all, what the hell's wrong with you? But seriously, take a deep breath because fans are going to love hearing about this one. Astronomers have spotted what looks exactly like a double-bladed lightsaber hanging in space. The real story is less Jedi, Sith, and more physics, but it's still beautiful to look at. When some young stars form, they take in massive amounts of gas, and not all of it sticks. The extra gets blasted back out as twin jets, which smash into nearby clouds of dust and gas, clearing space and heating it to thousands of degrees. Not every star puts on a show like this, but the ones that do are known as Herbig-Haro objects, and HH24 is a textbook case. It's about 1,350 light years from us, and thanks to Hubble's infrared vision, we can see it happening in real time. 21. The Sun is Scaly. Up close, the sun doesn't look fiery at all. It actually looks like the back of a reptile. The Daniel K. Inouye Solar Telescope recently gave us the most detailed image ever taken of our star. Instead of smooth golden light, it revealed thousands of cell-like structures, each one about 18 miles across. So, scaly. However, what you're really seeing is heat bubbling to the surface. Hot plasma rising in the bright centers, cooler material sinking in the darker edges. It's convection on a scale so immense that the tiles of that pattern are bigger than entire countries. And those little bright flecks hiding in the darker lines? That's where magnetic fields are bursting through, releasing energy into the atmosphere. 20. Astronauts have a nail problem. Here's a little something I bet you didn't know. Astronauts have this habit of losing their nails. The phenomenon is called fingernail delamination, and in one study, 22 astronauts admitted it happened to them. The culprit isn't space itself, but the gloves. Those bulky pressurized mitts cut off circulation and put so much pressure on fingertips that nails eventually separate and fall off. Painful? Doesn't even begin to cover it. What makes it worse is that some astronauts don't even wait for nature to take its course. They've been known to rip off their own fingernails before a spacewalk just to avoid the agony of losing them inside the glove. You're welcome. 19. The human body glows. We already know our bodies radiate infrared, which we feel is heat. But in 2009, a scientist named Masaki Kobayashi from the Tohoku Institute of Technology set out to prove that we also glow in the visible spectrum. He recruited 5 volunteers, photographed them with highly sensitive cameras every few hours for 3 days. Sure enough, the images showed faint light radiating from their faces and necks. The glow wasn't constant. It peaked around 4 in the afternoon, which scientists link to our biological clock and the way our metabolism works through the day. The effect comes from molecules called fluorophores releasing photons as they interact with electrons during cellular respiration. The light is about 1,000 times dimmer than what the human eye can detect, so you'll never notice it, but it's always there. 18. 6 months in space changes your brain for years. Astronauts like to joke about their puffy heads and bird legs when they're photographed after coming home, but that's only the surface level changes people can see. What's going on inside their skulls is even more surprising. A 2023 study showed that spending 6 months aboard the ISS reshapes the brain in ways that can literally take years to reverse. You see, in microgravity, fluids shift upward, pushing the brain higher in the skull and expanding the ventricles, which are hollow chambers filled with cerebrospinal fluid that help cushion and clean the brain. Scans have revealed that these spaces can swell up to 25%. The creepy part is they only shrink back part of the way after astronauts return to Earth, and in some cases, it takes up to 3 years before things look normal again. The changes don't seem to cause obvious cognitive problems, but since the same fluid system is tied to waste removal in the brain, including proteins linked to Alzheimer's, researchers think these findings might hold clues not only for space travel, but also for brain health here on Earth. 17. Your heart changes shape in orbit. This one might not be as disturbing as nails ripping off or brains losing volume, but it's still a little scary. In microgravity, the human heart actually changes shape. A study of 12 astronauts has discovered that the heart becomes almost 10% more spherical during long space flights than it is on Earth. The reason is simple. In space, the heart doesn't have to work as hard to pump blood against gravity, so it loses muscle mass and reshapes itself. The good news is that the effect is only temporary, and the heart returns to its normal shape when the astronauts return home. 16. Space blurs your vision. Go to space, and you might come back with fuzzier eyesight than when you left. What's happening is that the fluid in the body shifts upward in zero gravity, putting pressure on the back of the eye. Over time, that pressure flattens the eyeball and nudges the retina out of place, leaving vision permanently altered, in some cases. About 23% of short-term astronauts report it, and almost half of those on longer missions. On top of that, astronauts talk about sudden streaks of light in the dark, courtesy of cosmic rays hitting the retina. Between the fuzzy eyesight and the fake light shows, what you eventually get to see when you're in space is a mess. 15. You make antimatter without even trying. Right now, thousands of atoms inside you are breaking apart every single second. That happens because of potassium-40, a radioactive trace of the element your body uses every day. Most of the time it crumbles into calcium and throws off an electron plus an antineutrino. Antineutrinos are antimatter, and you're producing a steady stream of them just by sitting there. However, every once in a while, something rarer happens. A potassium-40 atom converts into argon instead. And in that moment, it spits out a positron, the antimatter twin of the electron. Now these positrons don't hang around. They slam into electrons almost immediately and disappear in a flash of energy. It's not a lot, but it's proof that the human body is never as ordinary as it looks. Even without a particle accelerator, you are still making antimatter. 14. All the space dust. The Earth gets sprinkled with a bit of space dust every year, which doesn't sound like a whole lot when I put it that way. But if you add it all up, it's 40,000 tons. Every single year. Think of it this way. That's the same weight as 36 million bags of flour, or 16 Olympic pools filled to the brim. Not with water, but with fine powder from space. Most of those grains come from comets and asteroids that shed material as they circle the sun. It's so fine that it blends straight into the air, water, and soil without anyone realizing it. But it wasn't always that invisible. Billions of years ago, it was thicker, piled up more, and scientists think it carried phosphorus and sulfur with it, dropping the building blocks that kick-started life here on Earth. 13. Our smiling sun. In 2022, NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory took a picture of the sun in ultraviolet, and the dark spots lined up into a perfect smiley face. Now, it wasn't actually smiling at us, sadly. No, those patches are called coronal holes, and it's basically where the sun's plasma thins out and cools. It's also where its magnetic field opens up and shoots streams of particles into space. And when those gusts of solar wind hit Earth, they're moving close to 500 miles an hour. Sometimes we're lucky enough to get pretty auroras out of it. Other times, it means issues with our satellites and power problems. So yeah, friendly on the outside, but it could very well be that it's cackling while it's unleashing radiation in our direction. Damn you, sun. I'm on to you. You're not that way. It's night. You're probably somewhere over there right now. 12. The Earth's evil twin. Venus might look like the Earth's sibling on paper. Similar size, similar makeup. But it is a death trap. The surface cools at about 900 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt lead, and the air pressure is up to 100 times heavier than what you're breathing now. Even if you could handle that, the clouds are made of sulfuric acid. So, pick your poison. Crushed, roasted, suffocated, or burned by acidic rain. And its upper atmosphere is a monster on its own. About 40 miles above the surface, winds rip at nearly 250 miles an hour, which is faster than the planet itself spins. To put that into perspective, the Earth's strongest winds only reach about a third of our planet's rotation speed. On Venus, the air laps the planet 60 times faster than the ground below. 11. Mars used to be gray. From the first time we got a real look at Mars, the one thing everyone noticed was the color. It was red, no question. But we only recently figured out why it looks that way. As it turns out, the whole planet rusted. That rusty coat comes from the same way iron-rich soils on Earth turn red, but the type of rust matters. Early on, researchers suspected hematite, an iron oxide that forms without water. If that were true, it would have meant Mars dried out early as its surface reacted with the thin air. More recent studies point to something else: ferrihydrite, a form of rust that requires water to appear. That changes the story. It suggests that Mars once had cooler, wetter conditions that allowed iron to oxidize quickly while liquid water was still around. Over time, that rust was grounded into fine dust and swept across the entire planet. Before that transformation, Mars was a gray, rocky landscape with running water. 10. Food made from astronaut breath. Astronauts don't exactly have grocery stores orbiting overhead, so space scientists have been experimenting with some unusual recipes. One of the strangest? Turning astronaut breath into food. This method, developed by a company called Air Company, fitting, starts with the carbon dioxide exhaled into a spacecraft. Mix that with water and electricity and you get alcohol, kind of like how plants make sugar. Feed that alcohol to a yeast starter and suddenly you've got a fast-growing protein-packed food source. Yeast might not sound exciting, but it's flexible. You can squash it into a flatbread or pasta, or use it as a base for other meals. It's cheap to produce, saves on supply runs, and doesn't need much more than a rolling pin and a steady supply of exhaled air. It's not 5-star dining, but when you're hundreds of miles above Earth, a plate of yeast pasta might be exactly what you need. 9. We've found a hint of life on K2-18b. Scientists might have caught the first real whiff of life on another world. When the James Webb Space Telescope turned its eye toward a planet called K2-18b, about 124 light years away, it picked up traces of a chemical called dimethyl sulfide. Here on Earth, that stuff mostly comes from microbes living in the ocean. So finding it out there is the kind of clue you don't ignore. K2-18b is more than twice the size of Earth, and while we can't visit, we can study the light passing through its atmosphere. Nobody's calling it proof yet, but the lead researcher went so far as to say we could have an answer in just a year or two. 8. Teleporting your mind. Okay, this one's a bit out there, but hear me out. Beaming a whole human body like in Star Trek is way beyond us. But some scientists think teleporting the mind could actually happen first. The idea comes from neuroscience. If you can map and transmit all the data inside a brain, you could, in theory, rebuild that mind somewhere else. And we've already done it with snails. In 2018, researchers at UCLA trained one group to react a certain way, then extracted RNA from those snails and injected it into untrained ones. The second group changed their behavior almost immediately, as if they were the ones who learned the lesson. That means memory isn't locked only in brain cells, it can be chemically transferred. Scale that up to humans, and you can see where the speculation begins. 7. Titan keeps burping itself in atmosphere. Saturn's biggest moon, Titan, is basically the heavyweight champion of moons. It's almost half the size of Earth, and the only moon we know with a thick, stable atmosphere. That hazy orange sky is mostly nitrogen with a splash of methane, and it's about 1.5 times denser than Earth's air, even though Titan's gravity is much weaker. Normally, atmospheres don't just stick around forever. Gas leaks into space or freezes out. So how does Titan keep its sky intact? Think of the moon like one of those jawbreakers with hidden layers. Under the surface sits a secret ocean, a shell of pressurized ice and pockets of organic material. Heat from below stirs all that up, and Titan slowly burps methane and nitrogen back into the sky. Every burp keeps Titan's thick orange atmosphere alive, making it one of the strangest and most promising worlds we'll be visiting with NASA's Dragonfly mission in the 2030s. 6. The Earth breathes. Every year, the Earth takes a deep breath. In the northern hemisphere's spring and summer, massive forests pull carbon dioxide out of the air like a giant inhale. Come fall and winter, when the leaves drop and rot, much of that carbon goes right back up. The exhale. Scientists can actually track it in the atmosphere, like a steady pulse tied to the seasons. The planet also shifts in other ways. Earth's spin has a little wobble called the Chandler wobble that makes its axis drift in a looping circle. It only moves the surface a few meters, but it's enough to throw GPS satellites off by a fraction. That's why GPS systems are constantly updated with Earth orientation data. Otherwise, your phone could put you a street over from where you actually are. Even though sometimes it totally does that already. It just gets worse. 5. The universe in you. You're walking around with a piece of the Big Bang inside you. And I'm not exaggerating. The hydrogen in your body has been here since the very beginning, about 13.8 billion years ago. That's older than Earth, older than the sun, older than every mountain, ocean, and city you've ever seen. Scientists say that while the heavier stuff, like carbon and iron, came from exploding stars, hydrogen is the OG. It formed just minutes after the universe itself began, when protons and electrons first teamed up to make atoms. That means every sip of water you take and every breath you pull into your lungs is carrying atoms that have been untouched since time immemorial. That is not the lyrics I remember that song. Every sip you drink, hydrogen's watching you. Nope. Move on. 4. Spacecraft use magnetic liquid seals. It goes without saying that keeping a spacecraft airtight is crucial. And one of the most amazing ways engineers do this is with ferrofluid seals. A ferrofluid is a liquid that's filled with nano-sized magnetic particles, and when it's held in place by a magnetic field, it forms a reliable barrier. Ferrofluid seals are often used around rotating shafts on satellites and orbital platforms that pass between pressurized cabins and space. A ring of magnets lock the liquid into position, holding the air in, while at the same time allowing the shaft to rotate. Because there's no mechanical grinding, the seal lasts a lot longer than traditional ones. 3. The Earth just had one of its shortest days ever. On August 5th, 2025, the Earth completed its spin about 1.33 milliseconds faster than the usual 24 hours. Now, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it was enough to rank among the shortest days ever recorded. The current modern record still belongs to July 5th, 2024, when the planet shaved off about 1.66 milliseconds. Things we use every day, like GPS, air traffic control, and global banking, all depend on timing that is synchronized to billionths of a second. When the Earth's rotation increases or decreases, those tiny shifts ripple into the world's most precise clocks. Normally, timekeepers add a leap second to fix the mismatch, but with the planet spinning faster, scientists have even begun to discuss the possibility of the first ever negative leap second, like actually deleting a second from the world's global time. 2. Growing chickpeas in moon dirt. What would you say if I told you the future of space farming is in moon dirt? Well, that's what researchers at Texas A&M are betting on. They recently sprouted chickpeas in simulated lunar dust, showing that farming off-world might actually be possible. Since real moon dirt is rare, scientists used a lab-made version and did their best to get as close to the real thing as possible. Then, since the dust is lifeless and nutrient-poor, they added worm manure and beneficial fungi. The general idea is that worms could be taken on missions to recycle all sorts of waste products into compost, turning sterile dirt into soil astronauts could use. Oh, and if you're wondering, they chose chickpeas because they're hardy, need little water or nitrogen, and pack solid protein. Using this proof of concept, lunar explorers could one day grow their own food on the moon and even make something as ordinary as hummus. Although, big deal, Matt Damon's already done that on Mars with potatoes. Are chickpeas the only food we dip into itself? Let me know in the comments below. Because you can take chickpeas and make falafel and then dip it in hummus. So you're dipping chickpeas in more chickpeas. Is there another food we do that to? On a regular basis. I could technically ground up carrots and dip other carrots into it, but that's not normally a thing. Let me know. I'm curious. 1. Don't hold your breath. For our last entry, I thought we'd look at something highly unlikely. For instance, say you somehow end up outside a spacecraft without a suit. No, you won't freeze. What would happen is you would have about 15 seconds before your blood runs out of oxygen, and maybe 2 minutes before the damage is permanent. The worst mistake you could make is holding your breath. In a vacuum, the air in your lungs expands until they rupture, forcing bubbles into your bloodstream. So the best thing to do would be to exhale. I know, you would still die, but bear with me. After 10 seconds, the water in your tissues would start to evaporate. The saliva will boil on your tongue, and the sun will do its thing with your skin. Despite what movies show you, you wouldn't freeze right away. Instead, you'd either mummify or eventually freeze solid, depending on the temperature. Not exactly peaceful, but strangely tidy. In fact, without bacteria to break it down, your body could float intact for centuries. And with that beautiful visual in your mind, I'm calling it a wrap. But before you go, let's see how sharp you are with a little trivia. Scientists have proven that humans glow. What creates that light? Is it A, static charge leaving the body? B, microscopic proteins in the skin breaking down? C, fluorophores releasing photons during metabolism? Or D, oxygen in the blood interacting with tissue? Drop your answers in the comments below, and while you're at it, tell me what space topic deserves its own video next. Oh, also, you don't want to miss our related video, 25 biggest discoveries in space exploration. The universe is massive, the mysteries are bigger, and trust me, the first story in that one is not what you'd expect. That link will pop up right here in just a second or so. As always, again, thank you guys so much for watching. Like, share, comment, subscribe, notification bell, do all the fun stuff, and I'll catch you guys next time.